One of the things that helped me a ton, which is understanding human behavior, dude. The whole organizational psychologist thing came about because I wanted to understand people and we're algorithms. Understand how disc profiles work, understand how you can actually leverage disc profiles and relate to people that way, right? Not just to peg them, okay, this person is a driver, this person is an interactor, whatever, but understand how that person communicates.
Nothing is new per se, and we're all speaking the same language when it comes to sales and communications. We just do use different words. And so one of the things I like to say is once you're dialed in, it becomes a dance because you understand exactly the tonality, you understand your pace that you need with these people, and it comes with repetition too. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people in the REI space don't really appreciate. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Leads to Deals podcast, where we're going to talk about everything from leads to deals. And you know, everything that we talk about leads to deals. If you find value in today's podcast, if you're able to take some tips, some strategies from today's episode, obviously I want you to like, comment, subscribe below. And today, I'm super proud to bring to you somebody who I consider an OG in this space for almost as long as I've been in this space. He's known about me and I've known about him. He's a sales coach. He's a sales mentor. He's an organizational psychologist. And so we're going to have to dive deep into that, but somebody I consider to be one of the elite in the industry. I want to welcome on today's Leads to Deal episode, Rafael Cortez. How's it going, brother?
Brother, doing well, man. Thank you for that warm intro. Yeah, we go way back. It's been years since I had you on my podcast, a while back, and I love everything that you're doing. The way you're growing is, it's amazing. Yeah.
What's so funny is I was thinking about, I was like, man, this guy, you were the very first podcast I had ever been on, ever. It never even thought of somebody would care enough to potentially invite me on a podcast. And this was maybe 3.5, 4 years ago, Rafael.
Yeah.
I remember how proud I was and so how thankful I was, Mom, I was on a podcast. I was really so humbled by it. So I want to say thank you for that, man.
No, it's amazing. We had that episode and I remember teeing it up for a couple other guys, hey, dude, you got to talk to this guy. He knows his stuff. He's got, good stuff, big stuff coming up too. So,
well, dude, awesome. I appreciate it. I didn't know too much about the space, and I've learned a lot about the REI space. And one of the things that attracted me to it, I think that you've really done a good job at is, the differentiation between coaches and the level of knowledge that people are sharing. And so I've been close enough to your network. I've got to see people successfully go through your systems and processes. And you're in the Mecca. Let's just be honest. You're in Arizona. It's the Mecca of every real one and fake one. And so you're there in the trenches. Let's talk about sales for a second, man. You're obviously teaching people all kinds of different tactics to be a CEO and a business leader, et cetera. But how did you first get started in the sales space, et cetera, with real estate?
So I got into real estate in 2009. I had another business. It was a transportation business, and it had nothing to do with real estate and everything. So I was able to bootstrap that thing and get some cash through the door. And I wanted to diversify. I wanted to invest in something else. So I got into real estate. Before that business, I was a firefighter in Yuma. So that first business was on the medical field. Non-emergency medical transportation, right? So I was taking people to and from medical appointments and wheelchairs and stretchers. It was kind of, somewhat linked to what I knew prior, which was the fire department. But dude, I got exposed to real estate through, I went down the whole, seminar route, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and got hooked on the books and drank the juice. I got to a point where it's this is, I'm selling the business. Right. So nice. I ended up selling that business and went into real estate full time. But yeah, I started flipping in 2009. I did a couple of flips and I went into, I got exposed to wholesaling through Todd Tollback.
Backwards, right?
Yeah.
But is that kind of backwards, do you think? Or is it just how the industry was back then? Because most times nowadays I see people they start wholesaling and they evolve into flipping. You actually started at flipping and then rolled into some wholesaling.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I saw the opportunity in it. And so for context, I guess, going through college and high school and all that stuff, what I knew how to do was swing a hammer. I worked construction. Amen. I would do your masonry and your framing and all that stuff, right? So to me, the tangible was a thing that made sense. It's like, all right, what can I do to make some more cash out of the cash that I have, because of the business? And I mean, the answer to that was, do a flip, swing a hammer. And I went in there and I started doing all the rehab. I did all the work and everything. So I got to a point where the business that I had was running. I had it running. It was pretty dialed in. And I had it running. I was spending maybe 6 hours a week on that business. So I could afford the luxury, right, to just
Sure.
get my attention into other areas. But it was a lot of work, and I didn't know what I didn't know. The first flip, I mean, it just kind of, I didn't lose money, but I made about, I think, $1,500 or $2,000 or something like that after like 6 months of sweat, blood, and tears, and it was just insane, right? But I was going through that, and I kept buying properties from this one dude, and I until the third. It wasn't until the third property that I decided to pay attention to the settlement statement. And there was an assignment fee on there. And then, I call title, what's this $18,000 assignment fee? They're like, oh, that's what you paid the guy for the property. He didn't tell you that? They're like, no, I mean, no. So I called the guy, and he's like, yeah, man. He was kind of like, being defensive
Evasive.
about it. Evasive about it. I was like, no. It's all good, dude. If you made money, great. How do I do that? It's like, instead of continuing flipping. And some people are really good in that, like that's their cup of tea, and they enjoy it, right? To me, flipping is it's an opportunity take. It's really not. I'd rather build systems and processes and lead a team and run through that, which is what I do now through wholesaling. But I still do flips here and there and whatnot, but I cherry pick, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of how I got into it. Early on, I started working acquisitions, pretty interesting too, but I started working acquisitions for Sean Terry. When I sold the business, he sent out an email blast looking for an acquisitions guy, and we're in the same city.
Sure.
And so I applied for it and met with the guy, and my idea was to stick around for maybe a year or so. Get some, front of the line exposure.
Sure.
And I ended up spending 2.5 years with his operation. Did great there. Started hitting, 1 mil, 1.2 mil right out of the gate on assignment fees. And I got hooked on that, dude. So
yeah, I love it. I want to go back to kind of what you said. I'd never heard anybody articulate it like that, but you said something about the reason why you did the flipping is because it was the tangible that made sense.
Yeah.
And I bet you there's a lot of people out there when they hear the wholesaling concept, it's like the people who don't understand why there should be an assignment fee.
Right.
Or even like you were when you saw on that settlement statement, $18,000. Why does he deserve that? I'm not saying that's how you said, but we've all assigned deals where somebody's like, I'm not going to buy it now. I'm backing out if you're going to make $42,000. That's not fair.
Right.
And it's because of that tangible makes sense. And so for you, did it take long for like that concept to set in like, oh, like, okay, this is more like trading stock, trading paper, or was it a while for it to finally click?
No, I think a good question, really good question, dude. And I think the thing that made it click quick for me was that I spent about a year messing around with stocks, doing day trading with my own money and whatnot.
There you go.
Putting money in, putting money out. It's like, oh, this is like a video game. Right. And then, sometimes it's game over and you lose, and sometimes you make some cash and whatnot, but I wouldn't hold on. I was just kind of playing. Right. So I pulled, I think I had about 100K that I was playing around with on stocks, and in and out, making some cash and whatnot. And I ended up on top, but it made me realize, right, that, okay, there's other, avenues to making money that I don't necessarily have to hold, put my finger on the asset.
Exactly.
Per se. So when that came about, is like, to me, it became a matter of understanding, like, okay, how do I do it? Is it legal? How do I do it? And
exactly. That first part. And then, it is legal. Okay. Where I'm in. But I remember when this concept was brought to me like 4.5 years ago, because I'd made all my money in other industries. I'd lent very similar-ish, kind of like to you. Like I had a successful business and I was lending money to a business partner who would be like, hey, listen, I'll give you this return. So I'll give you this in equity in the asset. And so like, cool. But then when that business went down and he explained this business to me, immediately I thought of like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or just some type of commodities exchange floor. I was like, so wait a minute. So I'm going to get this paper, and then I'm going to go stand in the community center, downtown Orlando per se, but this is, just in my head conceptually. And I'm going to wave this piece of paper and be like, all right, who wants to go 210, 215, 250? Right. And once I realized that like oh, that's how this industry works, at least on the wholesaling side, my I was hooked. I said, okay, this is great because everything else is a system and a process. It's like, okay, do I know how to generate leads? Do I know how to manage those KPIs? Do I know how to qualify those leads, have them speak to somebody, manage those numbers? And if you can kind of just get your business into CPLs and CPDs, cost per leads and cost per deals,
Right.
everything else kind of just flows into damn place. And so I really, really liked the industry, but I was almost too aggressive when I came into the sales side, coming from other industries and on my sales pitch. So what about you? How did you pick up your sales? Is some of the same fundamentals you learned selling for Terry, some of the same ones that you guys still use in your pitches today?
Actually, it's all the same stuff. I mean, I feel like there's nothing new under the sun, man. Like,
Amen.
sales is sales. But we're not inventing anything. If anything, we're tweaking. We're just kind of solving new problems and whatnot. But the approach is it's a very rudimentary and simple at its core, right? Like, you're solving a problem. You show up with a solution-based mentality, and I know it sounds cliche. A lot of times, people don't realize they have a problem, right? They have this idea in their head, and our job is to just paint the picture. Like, okay, and it's a matter. I mean, I call it, for example, a discovery conversation, right? And
Yes.
I have this algorithm or this sequence that I go through. It's a series of questions, not necessarily a script, but it's a set of questions that we just kind of go through to get everything dialed in. But before that, I mean, before you get to that point, one of the things that helped me a ton, which is understanding human behavior, dude. I can't tell you. That's where I got hooked on it. I went through. I have 2 master's degrees in psychology, but that's the reason why I did it. The whole organizational psychologist thing came about because I wanted to understand people, and we're algorithms. If you want to understand it at a I guess the easy route, right? Understand DISC. Understand how DISC profiles work. Understand how you can actually leverage DISC profiles and relate to people that way, right? Not just to peg them. Okay, this person is a driver. This person is an interactor, whatever. But understand how that person communicates, right? Understand when you say something, how are they going to take it on the other side, right? Ego plays into it. So when you start understanding human nature and human behavior, dude, the conversations just become it's like in my head, I'm on a boat and I'm just navigating through the ocean. That's all. Like, I'm getting around the ugly, gnarly waves.
It goes back to what you were just saying. Like, nothing is new per se, and we're all speaking the same language when it comes to sales and communications. We just do use different words. And so one of the things I like to say is once you're dialed in, it becomes a dance. Right. It's just like you said, navigating through the waves. It's that dance because you understand exactly the tonality. You understand your pace that you need with these people. And it comes with repetition too. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people in the REI space don't really appreciate. It's the reason why I love outbound for people who are brand new is because, like, how can I hack 10 years worth of sales calls? Just get on the phones for 1 year and you're going to do what the other guy's doing over 10 years. And that repetition is what's going to lift the weights. It's muscles. And you got to build that sales muscle.
I can't say that enough, man. I have a lot of students that come through and say, hey, I have $50,000. How can I get the fast leads? And they're getting, they're fresh in the business. There's a lot of things that we have to line up, right? Yeah, we can find deals. But for example, you get something through the door, you get let's say that you get an expensive lead. You spend some, good cash on PPC campaigns, but you don't have the wherewithal of how to deal with the lead when they come to you, how to, diagnose or even just recognize a problem, right? You're going to lose that lead to somebody else who does. I take everybody through the gauntlet on cold calling. Like, it's just put in the reps, right? So it is. I mean, I know, like, it may upset some people that, okay, cold calling, yeah, of course, it's teaching the same old thing. But there's so many different benefits that come along with you getting in the trenches and having those conversations. One, you're going to understand from the front row, right, what the real issues are, right? You're going to understand the conversation. They're going to ask you all kinds of weird things that we don't necessarily have, written out in handbooks and training materials and whatnot. Like, you're going to have to adapt to those conversations that you're going through it. And you can't do that if you're getting just, the first thing that you get is layup leads, the good stuff. Yeah, you want to spend money on that stuff, but you have to build yourself up if you're a solo operation. You have to build your team up if you have acquisition agents in place. Like, you're not going to give them the expensive leads if they can't, close, right? So it's the same thing. Like, it's like you said, it's building that muscle, but it's repetitions. When I started working with with Sean, I mean, I got thrown right into the fire. I met
How
with,
old were you? Let's roll that back. Like, how old were you
well,
when
I'm
you took your
42.
first
I'm
sales
42
call
now. That
with
was
Sean Terry?
2000. I'm 42 now. That was, 12 year, 2012, 13, something like that.
So
yeah.
we're young 30s. We're like right there in the mix. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm curious. Like, I want to learn. I want to, and I told my wife this, right? If I go back to work for anybody, because at this point I've been an entrepreneur for over a decade.
Yeah.
I called my own shots, and so it's tough, right? Like, you're gonna go back to work, and it's not because I failed at the business. I sold the business.
Sure. Yeah,
so
yeah.
the ego was kind of getting in the middle of it, and it's like, no, you know what? Just be smart about it, bro. You have this opportunity to go hang out with this guy, who's a killer into the space. And at this point, I had already closed, I think 2 or 3 deals, wholesale deals, just listening to the podcasts.
Sure.
Right? So proof of concept, validation, for the guy. So anyways, I went in. They throw me, dude. I was running on average about 25 appointments a week. So I was doing about 5 in-person appointments, face-to-face appointments throughout the valley. So I was like, boom, go to one house and go to the other and then go to the other. And the valley is big. I mean, Phoenix Valley is, it's, you travel. So, but I was going, at the same time, I was going through all my lessons and learnings, and I was going through university and all these things that I was learning about business and psychology and all that stuff, and I could just test them like right away at the table.
Yes.
So I mean, it was just a very prime stage for me, I feel, because there was a lot of knowledge coming in. And I just got to play with it, with the appointments. I remember making the conscious decision. I was like, I know this is not a lead. But this sounds like a very weird character. I'm just going to go meet with them anyways. And I would drive 45 minutes just to meet with somebody who I knew wasn't going to be a deal. I just want to have that conversation with them and understand them a little better. So I think when you have that active learning, right? You have that mode on, you're going to get better really, really, really quick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really what
and for all the young guys out there that are newer to sales, one of the things I was taught by one of my first sales mentors was to treat everything like an assembly line. Yeah. And so no matter what, you just go through the exact same consultation every single time from A to Z. And it's just like a steering wheel. I can't put a steering wheel on a car without a steering column. And so you go through the stages. And if you treat every sales pitch like an assembly line, and you go through it no matter what, even though you know it's ugly, even though you know that the husband ain't there, even though XYZ, it's not a deal, etc. But then you can actually have KPIs, and then you can have consistency. And then it's no longer a sales hunt. It's a pure numbers game. Right. Because I know 1 out of every 6 appointments or 1 out of every 4, whatever your numbers end up being. So that's why I love hearing you say that, because you didn't cut corners. You literally went through it no matter what and did the same pitch no matter what. And you got to hear those unique conversations no matter what. And I think so many people in this industry are prejudging themselves out of being a millionaire.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, man. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there was points where I wanted to get lazy about it and whatnot, but guess what happened? Whenever I did that, I saw a pattern. I was like, oh shit, it just went 2 weeks with no deals. When my regular is 2 deals a week.
Yep.
and it's like, all right, cool. Don't get lazy. Don't get complacent. Get back into it. But yeah, I mean, it's.
Do you remember any of those? Do you remember any of those that you turned from, as my old sales mentor, he used to say, you turn it from chicken shit to chicken salad? Do you remember any of those customers where you're like, there's no way that this is a deal here, and you were able to flip it into gold?
Yeah, in particular, I remember one. Okay, and I would play with phrases, right? I would just like, okay, if I deliver this, if I just kind of shape it like this and whatever. And one of the phrases that became one of my favorites is, I wish I could tell you what you want to hear, but the reality is blank, right? So this is where I'm going, I'm kind of leveling out with them and putting everything on the table. And I developed this sequence of finding spread in the deals through the entire conversation. So not just going for the jugular, like right out of the gate, but okay, I would use the comps, right? Of course, to create a gap in pricing and build some spread in there. I would use the condition of the property to create another smaller gap in pricing and do it there. And then I would use the sales fees and real estate stuff to create another gap. So I would end up with assignments that were, $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 when the average assignment fee was around $15,000. And I still do the same thing. I still take the same approach. I teach the same stuff. But the reason I got to that point is because I would test stuff. look, if I deliver this with this phrase, like how receptive are they on that end? And I remember this couple in particular, and they were stuck on retail. They were, and the property needed. I mean, I wasn't trying to
Sure.
bag them out of any proceeds or anything. The property needed work, and I leveled out with them. So we got on the same page as to what the area of the property was, and then we started going through this whole assembly line sequence of the conversation, right? That you're talking about as well. And it got to the point where, yeah, but this is this, and they were pushing hard on their point of view, which they always do. And I remember sitting back, and I was thinking about that phrase on the way in. I was like, listen, I wish I could tell you what you want to hear, but the reality of the situation is that, the market is not, there was something related to the market and supply and demand
Sure.
in that particular area, right? So I went there, and when I dropped that, I just, like, it clicked. You know what I mean? So like the
Yes.
little tweaks in conversation are often what happens. They had been approached by, they were talking to a bunch of wholesalers. My pricing wasn't the best pricing, but it was the realest conversation that they had.
Amen.
And they went for it, right? So yeah, it's pretty interesting, dude. Like the everything that you learn. And I remember these guys being very, very, very much like the husband was very much on the analytical side. The wife was very much on the supportive side, right? So tailoring that conversation, for example, with him, I would come in and then talk about, stats of the market. I would talk about details in the numbers. And with her, I would lean more towards a feeling type of conversation. Listen, I know this may be, this may feel a little unsafe and whatnot, but this is what's going on. So it's navigating those conversations, not through manipulation, but understanding how people communicate, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people miss this. And I heard this later in my career. I understood it, but this is a good way to summarize it. But it's quality questions lead to quality conversation.
Yeah.
Quality conversations lead to quality deals. And a lot of people just don't really appreciate the power of a reflexive question or the power of a secondary question. Oh, and how did that make you guys feel?
Yeah.
And what do you think you'll be doing after that? And then how do you see yourselves too? I mean, those probing questions, unfortunately, what I discovered about this industry, and this is why I think that if you have a desire to improve your sales acumen or you have sales acumen, you can literally be in any market and be in the top 10 percentile very easily because the bulk of people are order takers in the REI space, my opinion only.
Yeah.
But if you have those sales skills, you're going to have a conversation and the seller's going to have an experience, just like you said there, unlike any other, and they're going to feel listened to. And they're going to tell you their hot buttons. And it can be a logically based emotional decision.
Yeah.
And that's how you get somebody to sell their house while you're with them in their house that day. And so I just love everything you're saying because it's the core principles of sales that existed before we were here and that'll be here after we're
they'll
gone.
be here when we're gone, man. I think there's a tendency to get super crafty and overcomplicate things when in reality, people want to be seen, man. Another cool thing that I learned during that time was we talk about rapport, right? When we connect with a seller and I remember, man, having conversations like I would talk about football for an hour. And then, in the follow-up, I sold the property to this other dude. But we talked about football for an hour. I thought I was your guy, coming into it. And it happens, every single day, twice on Sunday, right? And it's like, what's going on? So I got more into that. And I realized that, for example, mirroring, right? When we isopraxis and we'll mirror somebody to create that level of rapport. And I thought that was a click. But no, when we have a good, subconscious connection with somebody else is not when we're mirroring them, is when they're mirroring us. So all tests, for example, if I'm sitting at the table with somebody, and I want to know how genuine the conversation is. And this is not just in sales, dude. I mean, I do this with my kids. I do it everywhere, right? Like it's a communication skill. But I'll lean forward, right? If you're hanging out with a buddy and I don't know, at a bar and having a beer and whatnot, and you're having a really good, solid conversation, lean forward, you're going to see that your buddy leans forward as well. I lean back, they lean back. So they start mirroring you unconsciously. Their subconscious is just, kicking in and whatnot. And that's when you have, like we're on the same page, not necessarily agreeing on everything, but we're on the same page in terms of communication and listening and paying attention to what's going on, right? So there's so many things that we can unpack when it comes to to sales. But at the end of the day, is having a core understanding of what the issues, what the problems are, being able to adapt right in front of them. I mean, experience speaks to that, right? When you're leaning into the sales process. So
let's give some newbie bars. I'll go like just simple, because right now we're so in the weeds right now. Me and you could go give a clinic on sales. And, the advantage that I have is that I have to train guys who have no sales at scale here in my office. We have 160 some people here, and the bulk of those are in sales.
Operation, and so love it.
Thank you, brother. But, and I try to figure out a way to simplify over and over and over and over and make the complex simple, because in the beginning you need small bites. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And so for me, one of the things I try to teach them, I say, hey, you know what? Every customer you talk to, the lead will be Rafael Cortez. And then here's all of his lead information. Say, I know right now, even before I pick up the phone, what is Rafael's favorite subject to talk about? Period. End of story. And they're like, what? Rafael. And so just saying his name, just something as simple as making a conscious effort for all of you new guys out there that are on your next sales call, on your next face-to-face, use these people's name more than just that intro. It's like, okay, Rafael, yeah, and you know what I was thinking, Rafael, and then, you know what, that's why guys like you, Rafael, and you're doing it the way you would do it for your best friends, because that's how you talk to your best friends.
Right.
You're using their name when you communicate with them. So that's a small little simple thing. Do you got a couple of small simple things that we can share with the guys who are starting out, and like how to adapt the way that their conversations, their face-to-faces should go?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I love face-to-face appointments so much is because 73% of the communication process comes through body language.
Amen.
I mean, you see somebody standing. I mean, I was talking, kind of setting the example of leaning forward and kind of leaning back, and I mean, there's so many different things, right, that you can read between the lines when you're in front of somebody. So if you're, for example, one of the things that's, I mean, this is crazy, but it's so accurate, dude. It's silly. When you're talking to somebody, if you're talking to a seller, and they're facing you, you're standing up. That's why I like standing up as opposed to just sitting down on the table, because I have a full picture of their body. Follow the toes.
Ooh.
Follow the toes. The feet are always going to tell you where that person wants to go. All right. So if they're into it, their toes, their feet are going to be pointing towards you. They're engaged in your conversation. Look at their torso, right? It's going to be pointing towards you. And you can see this, for example, at networking events. When there's two people that are really engaged in a conversation, their body is pointing towards each other. When there's somebody engaged, one person is going to be leaning in to that person, and the other one is going to be kind of, their toes are going to be pointing towards a door or towards whoever they want to go talk to next.
Yep.
Right. So that one is huge. It's huge, because when I see that, and I'm at a seller appointment, and they start pointing toes towards some other door or towards the window of the door or something else, it's an escape route for them. Psychologically, I'm losing them. Right.
Yep. And so now you know where you got to focus and engage.
Like, all right,
and
cool.
pull in.
I clicked the wrong button here. I bring the conversation back. And then, sure enough, most of the time, I get their posture back into that attention mode. So, it's little things like that, but that one is huge. Another one, when you're on the phone, we were talking about tonality, right? The speed of the conversation. You have to understand what the main kind of profile of the person is, right? And by the way, I teach a class on behavioral profiles. I have a recording on it. I can send you the link if you want to, give it out to your audience.
Sure.
There's no landing page or anything. It's just a training that I did with a with Mastermind that I am part of. But it breaks down the disc profiles, and I mean, I spend a lot of time on that. I'm very proud of it. So if you want it, I'll give it to you.
That'd be my honor.
So understanding kind of what the main behavioral profile of that person is, and then pegging, right? Like they have a natural monotone type of conversation. So if that's the case, but they're fluctuating, they go high pitch, they go low pitch, they go fast, they go slow, right? That's energy in the conversation. It's kind of like them pulling back or leaning forward when they're right in front of you. Right. So there's so many different things to pay attention to when you're having a conversation that tell you whether or not you're on the right route. The big idea behind that, it's not just to recognize it, it's to do something about it. Right.
Yes.
So if you see a stressor, pull back, just, take 2-3 steps back on that conversation and bring it back to, whenever they were engaged, whatever that topic was. Right. Kind of rescue it, navigate. And it's kind of like, hitting a wall and then just going around the wall.
I was doing call calibrations with a kid. He's like number 3 on the track. And he's like, hey, man, my manager didn't like this lead. I think this lead's great. Can you send it? And nobody ever sends the CEO a recording, but he was like, boom, let's say it. And I, with love, poured into him over it out of all the genuine mistakes. And I said, listen, here's the benefit. You've only been here for 3 months, 4 months right now. You're at the top. So you have a natural inclination towards this. But if I can change like 7 to 10 things, dude, you will print money the rest of your life. You'll never worry about a job. You'll never worry about it. Like, just follow me on these things. One of the things I was teaching them too is bring some honesty back into your consultation. He said, but I'm not lying. I said, but you're not honestly listening and you're not honestly reacting. This lady had said 2 things, like 3 things. She had said something about her husband passing and he gave a very faint, I'm sorry. And then boom, next to the thing. Then she said she's lived in the house for 50 years. Oh, first she said her name was Challenge or something like that name. And I said, right then and there, have you ever heard that name before? He said, no. I said, well, then tell her that. So, man, that's a beautiful name. I've been doing this. I have never heard in all my years on this earth, I've never heard that name before. And she's going to tell you about her great grandma that she's married after. And she's going to tell you about how she grew up in Mississippi and the struggles and everything she went through. And then when she talks about her husband that passed away, just ask her, well, ma'am, I'm so sorry to hit. Do you mind if I ask how many years were you married? And so he's not honestly listening. And then she said she lived in the house for 50 years. I said, stop. You've been with me for 4 months. How many times have you heard somebody say they lived in a house for 50 years? He said, never. I said, never let that happen again on the phone. When somebody tells you something the first you've ever heard, acknowledge it with them, celebrate it with them, inquire about it with them. And I think that's what a lot of people miss is they're not actively listening. And that's how you get that person to lean in and tell you their story and then start to unwind and put their sales resistance down so you can move to sales acceptance.
Yeah, dude. I mean, so on point. There's, I mean, I like to synthesize it in 3 levels of listening: level 1, 2, and 3. Right? Keep it simple.
I like that.
And level 1 listening is when somebody's talking, and you kind of checked out. You're trapped in the script. You're trapped on that. Oh, what's that next question that I'm going to ask? But you're not really processing the info, right? So it's sort of like a one-way, communication. And level 2 listening is like, okay, you're listening. And this is kind of like when you're arguing, like, for example, with your spouse or significant other, you're listening for gaps in the story so you can just corroborate your point of view and not really not understand or come in with a, some type of constructive, conversation, right? And level 3 listening is when we pay attention to what's going on. We kind of become the spectator, right? So we become this third party in that conversation. We understand their point of view, what they're saying, process it, and then we just kind of compare that to whatever we have as far as biases in our side of the conversation, and then put those 2 together and then respond, right? So we're processing info. Level 3 listening, man, that's exactly what you're talking about. People get caught in that level 2 usually for the sales. And there's so many things that are missed, right? Just because of that, I think it's just lack of awareness. I mean, this kid, sounds like a rock star. Once he gets that, comfortable with some of the cadences of it, game over.
Well, and he also, the other 2 things I told him were what you already said, though. I said, if I could change just 2, because there's so many things to change. I said, the very first thing I would change, if I could change anything in your pitch, even aside from the questioning, would be your voice inflections. Because you're flat the entire time and you're saying powerful things and they're saying powerful things and you're not doing anything back. So let's work on your voice inflections. And the second thing, which we said, was mirroring. Because you're talking to an 80-year-old woman in Alabama and you sound like a 24-year-old kid on the phone. And you know what she doesn't say? Not once in that call, she say, you remind me of my grandson. Okay, cool. So you didn't go the inferior route, but what about you remind me of my doctor? Because now you're the professional. You remind me of my attorney. You remind me of my financial advisor. He was nothing other than a telemarketer that entire call because he didn't have good tonality and he didn't understand his audience. He talked to an 80-year-old woman like she was 24. And you're going to have a disconnect there. And I was like, just those 2 things right there, dude, you'll print more money if you follow me on that. And then I'll teach you the rest of the tactics.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, man. Yeah, that's amazing. It's pretty interesting, man. And I feel like everybody's gonna have their people find their X factor, right? When you have good salespeople, for example, Sean and I have very different ways of closing. Sean Terry's more of a hard closer. I'm the guy that sits down and is like, people want to hug me after I leave the seller's appointment.
Nice.
And it's just, two different ways of going about it, right? You get results, but at the end of the day, like there's certain principles that you have to follow. One, it's going to be, having that just playing on the same page, right? Mirroring is one of the biggest things that I think plays a role in that kind of stuff. Just because it's hard to, when you're really in a conversation, it's hard to fake, if that makes sense. Right. And for them, like, even if they're thinking like, it's hard for them to fake it if they're caught in a conversation. For example, we may sit there and try, mirror and whatnot, because it's a sales strategy on our end. But when somebody starts mirroring you, like I mentioned before, dude, it's difficult. It's difficult to you don't even realize it. You may tell somebody, and I've done this, like where I tell somebody, okay, like these are communication principles and whatever, and would you mirror me, and this is going to happen. One of the things that I do, for example, when I'm teaching class, I like to just kind of, play with the audience a little bit and whatnot, and I'll start scratching my head. And just like, I'll do this for like 10, 15 seconds, just start scratching my head. And right before I get to the topic of mirroring, and then I'll be talking about mirroring, still scratching my head. And sure enough, dude, I look at the audience, there's going to be 5 people who are just like playing with their head or doing something. And you always, like, it always happens. It's tough to fake that, right? Especially if you're not in that lane of thought. So
dude, that's fire. Yeah. I like that. That's a good thing to do to somebody, and then to catch them in it in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, Rafael, what you're doing now. I know that you got a great business mentorship, REI mentorship. Tell me exactly what you're up to now, kind of the scope of things. And then I'd like to kind of dive into it a little bit, if you don't mind.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have the REI Wholesaling Academy. That's where I take people, from no deals to about 3 deals, usually, because after they hit 3 deals, they usually go up to the REI Elite. It's a second level or higher level training that I have.
Yep.
But yeah, the REI Wholesaling Academy, I break down on, how to negotiate deals, how to structure deals, how to comp deals. I give a lot of the ins and outs of how to actually build a business. My motto is hustle is a season. It's not a business strategy. We need hustle, right, to get through the process of launching, to the process of waking up when we don't have a business yet, and be driven, right? We need that hustle, but it becomes a tool. And if you cling on to the hustle mentality for too long, it also becomes a hindrance, because you're not hiring, you're not delegating, you're not building systems and processes, and every time you step away from your business, the business stops, right? So that's the foundation of the first initial part, which is the REI Wholesaling Academy. And then on the REI Elite, which is more of a one-on-one coaching program, I have that's where I go deep into systems and processes and KPIs, right? So like you said, everything is linear. I break down the business model into 6 stages. Basically, we have, first stage, which is sourcing. We got to source the leads somehow. That's where PPC, cold calling, and all those avenues come in. There's SOPs for that. Then we move on to converting, which is stage 2. SOPs for that as well. Acquisitions, dispositions, and then I have measuring, which is KPIs and tracking, and then improvement sessions. So it's a whole tier of what to do whenever a lead comes in from the point of inception to the point of monetizing. That every time you go through that cycle, you improve your business over and over again. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty methodical when it comes to building stuff out, but it's also what allows me to just work on the business, 4 hours a week and have it running, hit, 10, 15
and
deals a month.
How long were you in the space before you started the community?
11 years. Yeah, I kicked it off in 2020. So I started in 2009, and I started coaching in 2020. Yeah.
And the reason why I asked that, it's a loaded question, and I assume the answer for sure. But one of the things I always tell newbies is you wouldn't how do I say this best? You wouldn't date a girl who had been living in the same city and not ask around a little bit about them, and you wouldn't hire somebody to work in your company without actually reviewing their resume and going back and making some. And so what I love about what you said is like, hey, listen, I've been in this space for over a decade. I'm in this space for over a decade before I started to really reach out and help people. Yeah. Because it matters. There's seasons, there's cycles, 1,000%. There's strategies. Yeah. And so what'll happen is somebody will come in during a boom, have a good 6-month, 12-month period, and then shut down the company and then be a coach. Yeah. And so what I really enjoy about you and some of the guys that you hang with is it's a real authentic type vibe, a coaching experience. And for a lot of guys, and I say this the most humbly ever in regards to you, like you said, you have more of a soft sell personality.
Yeah.
And a lot of the industry does, and they don't know how to leverage that in a way to get results. And so by having somebody like you who may have a similar archetype, personality type, that's why I think a lot of guys out there, if you're struggling in sales, find people that kind of look and sound like you and go after what they're teaching. And so that's why I love your community, man, because I think that A, you're doing deals, B, you've been in it for over a decade. You've seen the highs and the lows. And you obviously understand sales.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Is it an online community? Is it in person? How are you guys?
So I do workshops with the REI Elite. We do in-person workshops, and then the REI Wholesaling Academy. It's an online community. So we hop on there. I hop on a call every once a week, and then I have a second. We have 2 calls a week. One is hosted by me, and then the other one I have somebody else that come in, another expert of we have a couple of different topics that we go over. I hit a lot of the mindset stuff. I mean, it's usually what it's crazy. 20% it's nuts and bolts, bro. 80% is going to be our own mental limits that we just kind of set up on ourselves.
And that's what's crazy, man. Because when I come and speak at an event or do something, it's like I in my head, I don't want to talk about the mindset stuff because I feel like, okay, people are paying me or people or whatever to get the tactical stuff. But I've come to realize exactly as you're saying, you almost got to lay that foundation first to help them understand that tactics, like priming the water well before the water can come out. And it's crazy because so much is the mindset, as you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I mean, it's that self-belief, right? Once we get, one of the things that I push for really, really quick is proof of concept. So we get proof of concept, and then that kind of starts morphing a little bit. Believe it or not, when we go through the process of building a company from nothing to 3 to 5 deals a month and whatnot, and we start hitting the REI Elite community, the more advanced people who want to scale and then tap into different markets and stuff like that, a lot of the times, or a lot of the time that we spend on, it's not at that point it's not lead generation, it's not it's on the leadership side. Like how to handle people, how to manage people, how to provide for your own internal community. And then how to deal with yourself as an entrepreneur. So the biggest thing there is switching that flipping that switch from the entrepreneur, from the hustler mindset to the entrepreneur mentality. It really is.
Yes.
It's two totally different planes of thought. And I mean, there's a lot that goes along with it, but it's really cool to just kind of, take the entire view and catch the journey, right, of somebody that's going through it.
I don't think it's easy, man. And, for anybody who started with absolutely nothing and, yourself, everybody who really started with very low resources, it really is hard to ditch the hustler mindset and to move into that more entrepreneur, CEO, leader type thing, just because it's been so successful this one way.
Yeah.
And it's hard to realize that this other more mature, less fun, I don't know, but like when it's easy to be addicted to being the hustler because you just go out there and you succeed by brute force. And so it really took me a while to polish some of the rough edges and move beyond that in my early entrepreneurial career because I just succeeded so well by being ferocious or, just grinding my face off until all the hours of the day were exhausted.
It's pretty interesting to see that too. And I resonate with it, greatly, man. So what happens at the beginning is more often than not, we're going to be in this survival stage. Or survival phase, right? Okay, we have to build a business. At this point, the whole purpose and vision and principles of ethics and more, none of that matters. I just want to make $10,000. We're in survival mode, and we're operating under that premise. So this is the crazy thing, right? Have you ever read Outwitting the Devil?
Yes, I have. Yes,
incredible
I have.
Book.
Yes. It's been a while.
Yeah. So one of the things that it talks about, for example, is the hypnotic rhythm, right? So hypnotic rhythm, it's just kind of, when you get into a cadence or a way of doing things over and over again, it doesn't even register. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because I got burned out when I was 26 years old. Because I was operating under that, the same idea or same, in the same way. I was just hustling through everything, no systems, no nothing in place. And I got bottlenecked, dude. I got so stressed. that I got to the point where I did not want to show up to work. I didn't want to go into the office. I don't want, like, that's not me. Like, I'm the guy that wakes up with a firecracker on his ass and just trying to, devour the day. And like that was gone. You know what I mean? For a while, it got so dimmed down that I didn't recognize myself. But burnout is a real thing, and the reason I got to that point is because I was operating from that survival standpoint. The crazy thing is that I was making money, and I was I got to a point where I was okay financially. Yep. So I wasn't necessarily in survival mode, on the outside world, but on the inner world, I was still operating under that premise, and then going, super heavy every single day and not delegating, and because I was just afraid of losing it all. So that transition into a different stage, and I mean, you start to me, it was more of I had to change my mindset. Because I was not going to succeed. Any success that I had tasted up to that point, I was going to lose it. So
yeah, and people got to understand too, behind of all of these sentences is a lot of pain though. No. And so like if me and you were at like a men's retreat, or we were at a bar or a cookout and we were having this conversation, we would be going so much deeper into this. Yeah. So for those guys, particularly guys, I'm saying this too, for those guys that are in that funk right now, like we've all been there, and the advantage is time really does kind of heal all wounds. It's just a matter of how quick you're going to kind of pull yourself out of it. Because I could feel it. I could feel like there's so much behind both of what we're saying.
Oh, bro.
Before we run out of time, I want to dig into this. First off, I want to tell you, just like, man, you know what I thought? Organizational psychologist. As soon as I saw that word, I said, that sounds like something I would use like to help my wife design our closet, like an organizational psychologist. Like come in, map it all out. Like, so what the hell is an organizational psychologist, bro?
It's business psychology. So
it's business psychology. Why don't they call it business psychology? It's so funny. Business organization. I was thinking like putting stuff in corners and stuff.
No. Pencils and shit.
Organizing things.
No, so it's when you basically become a psychologist for an organization. Right. So it's really what I do on the vertical of consulting. Nice. On the coaching side, I focus on real estate, but I bring all those principles into it. But when I do consulting for businesses, basically what I do is it's the same thing, man. I sit with the board and we go over a lot of stuff, and I make people and systems click. I mean, it's really what it comes down to. How can you do more with less, right? So we talk about the talent and strengths on the people side of things. And then I go through the entire biz ops and systems and processes and tweak everything so it clicks. I mean, I love it. I geek out on that stuff, man. It's like some people like playing, PlayStation and whatnot. I love doing organizational charts and flows and SOPs and stuff.
But you know what it reminds me of? I remember listening to some like famous movie director. And he was like, at my level, you don't get to enjoy other people's movies because you're back there. And if you do watch a movie, you're saying, okay, well, that's what that camera was set. Oh, I see that wire in the background, et cetera, et cetera. It's just another way of looking at the same thing. Right. And I think that's what's so valuable about having a guy like you or your team in somebody's corner. It's because like, we're both looking at the same thing. You can just see it differently. And if I can have somebody who can help me see the same thing differently, maybe I pick up on something I didn't realize. I have a buddy of mine, his name's Steve Richards, and one of his favorite quotes, and I just love Steve, this guy for it. Yeah, great. And so I literally added it as our number 6, what is it called? Not mission statement, but our core values, but was seeing around the corner. And so that's one of his favorite sayings. And like, it came to me in the season of my life where I needed that I needed to see that. I needed to hear that over and over and introduce it into my life. That's the same thing here. It's like an organizational psychologist, having guys like you in somebody's back, having their back, you help them see around the corner. You maybe help them understand what, by not changing this thing in their organization could lead to X, Y, or Z. Yeah,
it's exactly what it is. Yeah, Steve's a great dude, man. We're in a family mastermind together. We're part of the commission, both of us. So it's the advisory board. Yeah,
he's a great dude.
Solid dude.
All right, cool, man. So listen, let's figure this out. I want to, for any of my followers online, any of our followers here, my affiliates here, and my office here, how do we find you? What's the best way to follow you? How do we reach out in case we're like, you know what? I really don't. Maybe I am REI elite, or maybe I've followed Scott now and I'm struggling to get my first deal and I want some of that entry level help. How do people find out more about Rafael Cortez?
The easiest way to reach me is going to be on social media, Instagram. I'm pretty active on social. Rafael Cortez CEO. That's where you can find me. And then if you want to find out more about the coaching program and how you can build your own business that way, it's reiwholesaling.com.
Nice.
So it's pretty simple. Yeah, pretty straightforward.
And I can speak firsthand, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If you're brand new and you don't know nothing about this industry, this guy will talk to you just like you're a champion. Like he reached out to me, or we crossed paths when I was just a baby, a pup in this industry, and you were super cordial to me, and you were super nice, and you were encouraging to me, et cetera, et cetera. And it meant a lot to me 3.5 years ago, man. It really did. I said, oh man, that's the man right there. So, dude, I appreciate the way that you've been so gracious to me over the past few years. And sometime soon, I'm sure me and you will find a way to break some real bread together.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. Let's set it up. I'll travel. Let's do it.
Awesome, brother. Dude, I appreciate you coming out to the show. Everybody go follow his Instagram. It's Rafael Cortez, CEO?
Correct. Yeah.
CEO on Instagram, at Rafael Cortez, CEO. Let's get it, guys. Thank you for coming on, brother.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one. All right, thanks, man.